I'm Bass Fox. Welcome to today's video, which is the all-encompassing everything you ever wanted to know about compressors and were afraid to ask. Probably the only video you ever have to watch about compressors for bass, okay? By the way, I've been a bass player for 35 years, more or less, a sound engineer and producer professionally ever since the year 2000, so that's 26 years now. And I'm an expert in synthesizers, modular synthesizers, so I have done my homework as far as signal flow, signal processing. So I think I'm in a good position to explain these things for you guys. I want to start by addressing what I consider common misconceptions about compressors. I see these comments online, makes me want to go in there and become the keyboard warrior. Instead, I'm making this video. So the first one is compressors are a crutch for bad technique. And I have to say that that is not true. Otherwise, the best bass players in the world wouldn't use compressors, and they do. Even if they don't have a compressor in their pedal board, the front of house engineer in a live setting and the mixing engineer or recording engineer in the studio will be using a compressor on the bass. I promise you. You have not heard a bass recording on a pop, rock, modern recording that didn't have compression on the bass, okay? And the reason is related to the second topic. So I'll address the second one, which is, I don't like using compressors because they take away all of my dynamics, right? So, okay, that's also not true. In fact, the compressor benefits your dynamics. It allows you to play dynamically and still be heard and or not overpower everything. Right. What it does is it reduces your dynamic range. Yes, it does do that. That's the purpose of the compressor. It compresses the difference between your soft sounds and your loud sounds. Why is that beneficial? Well, in the real world, we have a gigantic dynamic range, right? From the whisper of a mouse to thunder striking a tree in my backyard. It's ginormous. You can't fit that dynamic range in a recording. And it doesn't work in a live setting either, because what happens when you're live? Well, people are talking, you have other musicians playing with you, there are numerous things competing for that low dynamic. So if you play too soft, you won't be heard, right? And also there is a limit to how much the human hearing can tolerate as far as volume. So you can't go too loud either, right? You don't want to go as soft as a mouse or as loud as a thunder. Now, the bass has great dynamic potential, right? You can go from extremely soft. Let's turn off all compressors right now. You can go from extremely soft to pretty loud, right? And that range is often excessive, right? When it comes to a recording situation or a live situation. There's a rule of thumb that engineers go by, which is the more instruments there are in a mix, the more you will use compressor on those individual instruments. Conversely, the fewer instruments there are, the less you need compression. So when do you not need compression at all? I'm not saying that's never the case. It is the case if you're playing solo at a quiet theater, for example, or at a church where everybody's quiet. Because there, you're not competing with another instrument, you're not competing with people talking, you're not competing with cars, right? If somebody's listening to a playlist on streaming in their car, all the noises from the car, the fan, the noises from outside, if you play too soft, you won't be heard, right? So if you're playing at a church, like a cathedral, right? By yourself as a solo instrument, or maybe just you and a piano, and the pianist is very sensitive and is able to follow along with your dynamics so he doesn't cover you up or she doesn't cover you up. That's a situation where maybe you don't need a compressor. In fact, you might not want one. You might want to take advantage of that dynamic range the instrument offers you. Other than that, why do I say that the compressor actually permits you to take advantage of the dynamics in your playing more than if you didn't? Well, if you didn't use a compressor, you'd pretty much have to find, if you're playing with a drummer and guitar player and keyboard player, vocalist in a band setting, for example, you will probably have to find that volume on your amp, volume on your bass, and volume on your playing that remains consistent as far as volume goes throughout the performance of each song. And in pop rock music, there's normally not that much dynamic variation. I mean, you can make a case for Nirvana, for example, that have those sections where it's not distorted and it's softer and then it gets distorted. But if you go look at the actual decibel levels, it's so highly compressed that what you really hear is the difference in texture and density rather than volume. So even the soft sections in those songs are loud, and the loud sections are softened. And that's done with compression and also fader writing, right? Automation in mixing process. So the reason I say that a compressor allows you to actually play dynamically is because of that, because you can take advantage of the tonal variation, the density, the sound that you can get by playing in different dynamics in your bass without losing volume or becoming overpowering, right? So that means I can, for example, let's turn on my Cali 76 compressor over here. And if I'm playing, like this is like a normal volume, let's say. And then all of a sudden I feel like there's a section where I want to go kind of thumb pluck or play some harmonics or do a crescendo, right? The fact that the compressor is squashing my dynamics means that the soft notes are still audible and the loud notes don't overpower. Let's say I'm playing fingerstyle and then go into a slap. See, so I can use all of those variations in articulation that normally would vary wildly in loudness without that being the case, right? So the soft notes are loud enough to be heard and the loud notes are soft enough to not destroy everybody's eardrums, right? So that's, anyway, I've made my case for why compressors are useful and maybe even necessary and maybe even essential, and why I have so many compressors, because I am a sound engineer, like I said, and I am obsessed with compressors. I'm an obsessor. I'm an obsessor with compressors. So, in fact, I just feel like playing. Now, before we go into checking out the different kinds of compressors, what the settings do and everything, we need to really understand what is going on. What does a compressor actually do? So I'm going to actually put the bass down. Pull out a notebook. Check this out. We're going to go to class, folks. We're going to have a look, try to make a drawing here to illustrate what is a compressor doing. Okay, so we already know that what it does is it makes the loud notes softer, right? Basically. And that means you can turn the whole thing up, right? And therefore, the soft notes are louder as well. You can squash your dynamic range and then boost it slightly. And then you have that sweet spot where all of your notes, whether you're playing soft or loud, are going to exist in that dynamic range that is appropriate for the style of music, the type of ensemble, the type of setting that you're in. All right, so we're just going to make a little box here. We're going to call it compressor. Right, and I'm using this fancy Japanese calligraphy pen here, which my wife brought to me from Japan, right? And we're going to divide the box in two. Okay, the top part we're going to call detector, and the bottom part we're going to call processor. And then the processor has output and an input. Okay, and the detector only has an input, right? Now, the detector is a circuit that detects the loudness of your input signal, okay? So it's kind of an envelope follower in a way, right? What that means, it follows the envelope of your amplitude, of your volume, your loudness, right? And this is a dynamic controller. I'm kind of making these up these terms. They're not necessarily the terms you'll find elsewhere, but this is just a way to make it clear to you so you really understand what I'm talking about over here. So this is basically what a compressor is comprised of. Now, normally, this is most compressors. Both these inputs are tied, right? Both these inputs are tied to the main input of the compressor. Okay, so let's say we have your bass guitar over here, right? That's a horrible drawing of a bass. And here we have your, whatever, your other pedals or your amp and cab or your DI straight to the mixer, be it in the studio or live, right? And this one goes to 11. So what is happening over here? What happens is the sound is going into both the detector, and the detector is controlling the dynamics controller, right? So this is like a automatic volume knob. You have a number of settings. One of them is the threshold. One of them is the ratio. And then you have attack, release. And then you have possibly output gain, which is that makeup gain for when you want those softer notes to sound louder. And since you've squashed the louder ones, you can afford that little bit of gain there and you won't blow the speakers or blow people's ears off, okay? So for now, we're only going to talk about these controls. There are other possible controls, but these are the main ones. They're the ones you find, for example, on the MXR Bass Compressor over here, right? You have attack, release, ratio. Now, you don't see threshold here. Sometimes some of these have a fixed threshold. But first, let's talk about what is a threshold. The threshold is the point at which the compressor starts to act. So let's say your volume is, you're playing softly and your volume is over here. Suddenly you pop a note. Now that's going to go over the threshold, right? So the compressor, the detector circuit is going to detect that. It's going to notice that you went over the threshold, and it's going to apply a volume reduction in the dynamics controller, in the processor section of the compressor, and that's going to lower the volume momentarily, right? How fast is it going to act? Based on the attack. How fast is it going to let off once the volume has gone back below the threshold? Well, that's determined by the release, right? And the overall volume is determined by the output. And how much will it reduce the volume once it's crossed the threshold? That's determined by the ratio. Okay, so the threshold is the point at which the compressor starts to act. The ratio is how much the compressor will reduce the volume. The attack is how fast it'll act. The release is how fast it'll let off once you've gone back below the threshold. And the output volume is also known as makeup gain, right? So I hope I didn't make this overly complicated, but this is basically it. You can go look at other videos that might go more in depth into the technical details of how compressor works. But we're going to talk a tiny little bit more about that because I want you to know how you set those settings, right? So let's say we have our threshold over here. If you have a fixed threshold, your input gain, what will it do? It'll turn up the volume before it hits the detector and the dynamics controller, right? So effectively, you're bumping your volume up or down relative to that fixed threshold. So that's the same thing as lowering or raising your threshold, right? So there are two ways to control the relationship between your input volume and the compressor threshold. One is by just turning up or down the input, right? Which you can do with a previous processor as well. You can have the input gain of your compressor, but you can also have a booster pedal coming before it or something like that. And then if you have a movable threshold, then you can leave that input gain fixed and just lower the threshold. And then you can make up for lost volume with the output gain over there, right? Now, let's say, what's the ratio, right? A ratio is often expressed in either a single number, which are usually like 2, 4, 8. For example, here we have on the MXR 4, 8, 12 and 20, right? In the Cali 76, the ratio is fluid, so there are no fixed ratios there. The same with all the other ones. All the other ones have a fluid ratio control, whereas the MXR has this switch that. And by the way, the MXR Bass Compressor, they sell the same one in black called Studio Compressor. All it is really is just a compressor. There's nothing that makes it necessarily suitable for just the bass. You can use that with anything. You can be a studio tool if you want to. The clean, for example, is actually stereo. It has a sidechain. Oh, I didn't talk about sidechain. First, let's finish talking about ratio. So what do those numbers mean? Sometimes you will see them expressed with 2 dots and a 1. So 2 to 1, 4 to 1, 8 to 1, 12 to 1, etc. But it's really simple. It's really simple math. The volume past the threshold gets divided by this number, and that's measured by decibels. So let's say you've gone up 12 decibels over here, 12 dB, right? And you have a ratio of 4. So you're going to divide the 12 by 4, and so you're going to have 3. So your compressor is going to bring that peak down to 3 dB over the threshold, right? And it's as simple as that. So obviously, what you really need to know is just that the higher the number is, the more squashed your sound will get, the more compressed it will get. So now to the argument of people that say, oh, that a compressor takes away all of my dynamics. I like to have dynamics when I play, and a compressor just squashes it all. Well, if you know how to use your compressor, that won't happen, because you can dial in just the right amount of compression to help you bring your dynamics to a useful range where it doesn't go too soft to be heard or too loud to be tolerated, without removing your dynamics completely, where it still respects a certain amount of volume variation or dynamics variation. If you feel like it kills your attack, you can make the attack slower on the compressor so that it takes longer to act. That means it'll let that initial transient through, and you get a very punchy sound. If you feel like it's giving you too much of a plunk and then gives you a ton of sustain, then you can make that attack shorter so that it acts more quickly. And all of that takes just experience. It takes just using it and getting used to what a compressor does and how it sounds. Use your ears, please. There are useful visual indications. A lot of these compressors that we're going to look at today have a meter that shows you how many dBs it's actually reducing. That's the gain reduction monitor. Boss has one of these. The Cali 76 has it. The MXR has gain reduction over here, and the clean shows it in the brightness of one of the LEDs. Right? The DOD does not. This is the simplest and cheapest one that I have here. It's an optical compressor, and it only has a single knob called compression. So everything on this one is fixed. So you can also maybe find one that works for you, like this, that you like. You just like to have always on with the preset attack, decay, ratio. Maybe the compressor knob isn't just a threshold. Maybe that is also a ratio control. I don't know for sure. I haven't looked at the electronics inside the DOD here, but basically it just compresses more as you turn that compressor knob up, and you can compensate it with the level knob over here. So this is a simple one that doesn't have any kind of gain reduction indicator, but all the other ones do, and the ones in the Anagram do as well. The Anagram here is our example of digital. Although the bass comp is also digital and the clean is digitally controlled, this one is going to represent the kind of compressors that you find on digital live consoles and digital audio workstations in the studio as well. This is the proxy for that kind of compressor, as well as what it is, which is a self-contained bass processing unit. Okay. By the way, if you're wondering what's with all the cables here, I'm actually running my compressors in parallel. My bass is going through a gentle preamp in the Dark Glass Anagram, followed by a harmonic booster, which all I'm doing is adding character. I really like that character control there to give it the kind of harmonic content that I like for my bass. And then it goes to an effects loop. The effects loop is going to this switcher over here. This is a stereo switcher. So being stereo, it has 2 channels. so that I can have one channel be an input, the other channel be the output, and then I can switch here between all 4 of my compressors, which one I'm sending that effects loop to from the Anagram. The reason I'm doing that is so they're not going one into the other, into the other, into the other. That means I can leave them all on and just switch. And also, all of these pedals have input and output buffers, which might somehow affect the response. So I'm avoiding that possibility. It's basically like rewiring, like pulling the cables from one compressor and putting them on another and another and another. But I'm doing this with a switcher rather than manually, just to keep things tidy and professional. Okay, I hope the theoretical portion of this video is clear. If it's not, please ask below. If you have any questions, I will do my best to try to respond to all of the comments. But now everything's going to make much more sense once we start actually looking at the controls. And now we're going to also talk about the types of compressor, because there's been different technologies used for compressors, right? One of the early ones is optical, right? So basically the envelope detector circuit generates a voltage that lights a little bulb, and then the controller section has a light dependent component, either a resistor or a transistor or something like that, that responds to that light. So that's how you couple the detection to the control. A lamp lights up brighter if your sound is louder, softer if your sound is softer, and then that controls via a LDR, a light dependent resistor most likely, transfers that information over to the controller circuit that then determines how much the volume will go down. And of course, there's other parts of the circuit that determine the ratio, the attack, the release, all of that. And the DOD here is an optical compressor. I think the famous studio one is the LA2A. I think that is an optical compressor as well. Now, the second most popular compressor that happened right after the LA2A is the famous 1176, which is an FET compressor. So a FET transistor is a field effect transistor, and it's a particular kind of transistor that was used in the URAY or Universal Audio 1176 compressor, which is that black face one with the buttons for the ratio, 2 big knobs, a meter in the middle. You've seen plugins of that if you haven't seen the original in a studio or a clone of it. And that's why the Cali 76 is called Cali 76. It's a version of that JFET circuit. It's got JFETs in there. And the dark glass Anagram has a version of that as well, which is, and we're going to turn off now, we're going to turn off the effects loop here and going to plug in the Luminal compressor here by Dark Glass. Their Luminal, hyperluminal pedal has 3 compressors in it, but the Luminal plug-in or block inside of the Anagram is an FET compressor, as you can see right there. Right? It's called Luminal. When you look at the graphics, then the title that pops up is more descriptive of what's actually going on there. So here, again, we have the input and output. We have attack and release. We have ratio controls, which are fixed for 8, 12, 20, and all. All is, somebody someday found a hack that when you pressed all 4 of the switches, of the ratio switches on the original 1176, you got this really gluey, squashed kind of compressor that people really loved to use, especially for drums or for the final master bus, right? So this simulates that. So all means all 4 switches plugged in. The other 4 options, you have 4, 8, 12, 20, and then all, right? So we're going to leave it in all right now. And now, as we can see here, there's also a little meter for gain reduction. And that's showing you exactly how much gain is being reduced. Right? And right now, for example, it's still reducing at around 6 dBs and then as my bass decays, it goes back down. And that's why you have sustain, right? When people talk about sustain, what does that mean? Sustain just means that the note lasts a long time with consistent volume. And what's happening is the bass naturally, as the string loses energy, it loses volume, right? But if your compressor is acting, as it loses volume, the compressor also acts less and less, letting more of the original dynamics through, and that maintains a more consistent volume throughout. So that's why guitar players, for example, that like to solo with lots of distortion and have long sustained notes, use compressors as well, and that works for the bass too. Right? Now, this one, as you can see, doesn't have a threshold control. So like I said before, the way you control the threshold is just by manipulating the input level here. So if I turn up my input level, we can see how it actually even gets orange there because it hits the maximum gain reduction, right? So this is like super squashed, right? So yeah, so it's a fixed threshold, and the way you control the relationship between your input volume and the threshold is actually by turning up or down the input level, not by moving the threshold itself. There's a couple of things that I want to show you with this. Let's go back to a more manageable ratio here, 8:1, right? And I feel like we could use a little bit more output volume here. We're going to make up that. Now, sometimes you see, like, I'm feeling like my notes are actually getting louder because when I slap, you have a lot of high frequency content, and then as it dies down, the sound of the bass gets bassier, and that's translating right now as it sounding louder, right? So you have to kind of find the right, maybe all we need is just a tiny bit. Or maybe we need to let that attack through. So how do you control the attack? We have this knob over here. Now, be mindful of which direction. Different compressors are fast or slow in different ends of the knob, right? So this one thankfully shows you, if you go all the way, it says fast. So weird, right? Normally you would think, like on a synthesizer, you turn the attack clockwise, you get a slower attack. So it's like a time, right? This is a little time, so it's a fast attack, more time. But this one, it's fast over here and slow over here, counterclockwise. So we're gonna let it be slow and right. So, but I'm still kind of hearing that. We're gonna make the release. Let's try fast, a little trial and error. See, I feel like. Now, if you still feel like this is too compressed, there's an additional control called blend, which now leads us to the subject of parallel compression. You might have heard the expression parallel compression. What that means is that you create two paths. One is clean and one is compressed. And instead of just using the purely compressed path, which is what most compressors do, you can add in the clean sound, the non-compressed sound, and by blending them together, you find your sweet spot of how much you want the sound to be compressed. So right now blend is at 100%. You can bring it to 50, and now we're 50-50, the uncompressed sound and the compressed sound. Nice. So now I'm hearing more of the percussive attack of my slapping. But still having the benefit of added sustain and more controlled dynamics from using the compressor. Now, in the analog domain, we have the Cali 76 would be the equivalent to the FET compressor here. So why don't we compare them? Now, there's a very important difference between this and this. The Cali 76, and now it's going to be useful that I told you about the separation in the compressor between the detection and the processing, right? Because the Cali 76 has a high-pass filter. Now, a high-pass filter, as you might have seen in my video about equalizers, is a filter that cuts off the lows. Why would you want to cut out the lows on a bass-centric pedal? Well, it's not cutting out the lows in the processor. It's only cutting out the lows that are going to the detector circuit. So that means that mostly high frequencies are attacking the detector, and the compressor will then only react and lower the volume when the higher frequencies are too loud, right, are past the threshold. However, the low frequencies don't affect it as much, and that's a common problem of using compressors with bass, is that the bass frequencies have so much energy that they trip that compressor and might get an overcompressed bass sound as a result. So the Cali 76 addresses that by only filtering out the low frequencies from the detector portion, which is also known as sidechain, by the way, and we didn't talk about sidechain yet. Just a quick aside, sidechain is simple. Sidechain is when you send a different signal to the detection circuit than the one that's being processed. Right, and a classic example of that is the ducking effect you get, for example, when you send a kick drum to the sidechain of the compressor of a keyboard, and then every time the kick hits, that keyboard goes softer, so it makes space, makes room for that kick drum to really sound without sounding muddy, without being overshadowed by other instruments. So in dance music, that's used a lot. Sidechain compression, equivalent to the ducking effect, right? And basically what that means is that you're separating those two inputs, the detection input from the processing input. You're processing the volume of your instrument based on the transients of another instrument. So that's what sidechain is. The Chase Bliss Clean has that option. So all right, so we're going to turn off the Luminal over here on the Anagram, and we've turned on the effects loop now, and now we're going to choose the Cali 76, which is our 1176 based FET compressor, right? And this is the holy grail of bass compressors, by the way. Most people swear by it and say that it's the absolute best pedal compressor you can get, and I'm finding it hard to refute. You see, I like to play with this attack, like almost slapping, but with my fingers. Not all the time, of course, but right now that's what I'm doing. And there's a high probability of a lot of dynamic variation when you use this technique, and the Cali is doing a wonderful job of making up for that, right? And you can see right here, this LED represents how much that volume is being affected. And I have my high pass filter here at like 11 o'clock. So it's cutting, I don't know exactly which frequency that's cutting off, but if I turn it up all the way here, then you hear a more thumpy sound because the compressor is acting way less, because it's really only picking up like the higher frequencies, right? If I turn it up even higher, so it's almost like not compressing, right? You compress less and less as you turn that knob up. I kind of find that the sweet spot for it is at 11 o'clock over here. Now, the attack and release on this one is interesting because it goes from fast attack, slow release to slow attack, fast release. You don't have individual controls, and I'm sure they came to this conclusion that this would be a good implementation with lots of practice, lots of experience. So I'm going to trust them. Folks, editing Kinkas here. I just wanted to make a quick note that I get it now. I found in the Cali 76 user manual, there's a description of why they use slow attack, fast decay. For example, in the preset called Percussive and Lively, it says a slower attack time allows the compressor to accentuate the start of any note. A fast release time lets the compressor recover between notes so that phrases sound more percussive. So that's the idea. If you have a slow attack and a slow release, then the compressor just stays down. It doesn't give you that plunky fast attack because it doesn't have time to recover between notes. So that's the idea. Anyway, let's get back to it. And now we made the attack slower, and you can hear a little punchier, a little sharper transient there on my attack. Multiband compressors. I have two here, which is the Ignissor in Anagram, and the Boss Bass Comp is actually digital. It is a physical pedal, but it's not analog circuitry in there. It's doing what it does digitally. Doesn't mean it's bad. It sounds wonderful. It's one of my favorite compressors. I love it to death. But just so you know, it's digital process in there, and you don't have access to any controls beyond the normal controls that you would get. So it's doing the multiband portion of what it does under the hood. It also addresses that problem that the Cali 76 addresses with a high-pass filter. A multiband like the Bass Comp addresses it by separating the three frequencies and compressing them separately. That helps to give you a very clear sound, and sometimes that's awesome before distortion, for example. It makes your distorted sound way more defined and clear. Let's just listen to the Boss, right? So I'm going to turn it on. It's on. Right, and on this one, you have a threshold control. So this one, you have a fixed input, and you have a movable threshold. So if I bring the threshold down, see, we see much more little LEDs light up in the gain reduction meter. And listen to that. It's really clear sound. Because it's compressing each frequency band based on how loud that band is, and not the entire signal based on the sum volume of all frequencies, right? So this is a really good compressor. It does color the sound a little bit, but I think that's why. Basically, you're changing the volume separately, right, of the bands involved. So that's a little bit like EQing, right? Some people might call it dynamic EQ, right? A multiband compressor and a dynamic EQ are, if not the same thing, they're at least cousins. Right, and here you can make up the gain a little bit if you want to with the level. That's like the makeup gain. And you have only a release, so there's no attack control on this one. The attack is preset. But you can make the release longer, right? See how it takes longer for those LEDs to go back? Now if I make it fast here, way faster, right? And compression is really nice for when you're playing legato like this. With lots of hammer-ons and pull-offs and stuff, because a hammer-on is gonna naturally have a different kind of volume than when you're plucking, right? Even if you have great technique, trust me. Right? And a pull-off will usually have a softer, right? Even if you have great technique, it's really difficult to get the same volume on a pull-off as you get on the initial attack with your right-hand plucking. So that's why that sustain, that compression, that controlled dynamic is really useful for legato playing. And you have the ratio control. So you can have very high ratio or very low ratio. See, with a very low ratio, in fact, it doesn't sound like it's compressed at all. It isn't. As you can see by the display there, no LEDs are lighting up, so that means no compression is happening. Now, if I put a drive here, distortion, I'll use an amp with drive. So like the orange horror bass here, fruity. I'm going to turn off the compressor right now. Right? And I'm going to turn on the overdrive on the fruity. And turn up the gain on it too. By the way, I forgot to mention that when you use overdrive, distortion, fuzz, any kind of distortion, that naturally also compresses the sound somewhat to varying degrees. So you might need less compression if you're using distortion. Now we're going to turn on the compressor and hear how it scoops out those muddy frequencies. Right, and I can turn down the level here to make up for that gain I added. Maybe we want more ratio. No compressor. Right, so effectively it's controlling the volume of the frequencies individually, and therefore what it delivers to the distortion, which is the gain and overdrive portion in this case of the head we're using. And also it keeps the distortion more consistent too, right? Because obviously when you play louder, it distorts more. If you play softer, it distorts less. And that's desirable. You do want that to some extent, but maybe you want to control how much, right? So that it doesn't have that huge a variation between distorted and clean. Right? You can still do it if you play super soft. That's nearly clean there. As I play louder, so even with the compressor on, it's still doing it, right? You're still controlling the amount of overdrive by your playing dynamics. But it keeps it more consistent, more clean, and it scoops out the muddy, right? The muddy aspects of the sound. Now we're going to turn that horror bass off again. We're going to turn off the effects loop, and we're going to have a look at the Ignissor, which is the brand new, just came out, brand new multiband compressor by Dark Glass. And that's over here in EQ Dynamic and Filters. It's got this kind of military green look to it, and we click on it, and this is what it looks like. So you might have seen my video on the Entropia. The Entropia is a multi-band distortion plugin. So this is similar in that it separates the bands, but it doesn't distort. It's just a compressor, right? And this is, by the way, spoiler alert, this is out of everything we're looking at over here, it's my favorite one. Because I'm a tweaker and I'm a synthesist and I'm a sound engineer and I like having this amount of control, it means that I can really, really dial in the sound that I want. Now, it might not be for everyone, because if you are looking for something that's more simple, that doesn't give you option anxiety and doesn't make you second guess your sound and tweak to death and take forever, then maybe you want something more simple like the Luminal. And there are two more compressors in the Anagram, the Bass Compressor, which is based on the SSL Bass Compressor from the SSL mixers, the classic SSL mixers. And that's a classic compressor used for bus mixing, right? For the end, just to glue the whole song together, including all of the instruments. So there's a model of that in there. And the other one's called Compressor Limiter, which is just a really nice compressor. I think it's VCA based. We'll talk about VCA in a bit as well, because I do have two VCA based compressors, the MXR and the Clean. VCA, voltage controlled amplifier, right? And those DPX compressors from the late 80s, 90s, a lot of compressors that are used in the studio that are not fancy FET compressors or anything like that, or PVCA compressors. Let's have a look at the Ignissor. First of all, there are some templates over here. You hit templates and already you have studio glue, neutral ground, slap and pop, demudifier, cordial, and pick metal. So these are ideal settings for different situations. And of course, that'll depend on your personal technique. It'll depend on the instrument you're playing, the amplifier, everything. So they're not going to be perfect every time. The demudifier is nice to put in front of the drive to increase clarity, which is what we just did with the bass comp. But we're not going to go into these. You can check these out in some other video or by yourself. We're going to look at how to control the Ignissor ourselves. So there are 3 bands, and we have 6 knobs up here. So basically, each 2 knobs affect 1 band. One is threshold, the other one is level, right? So over here, we have the threshold is pink, right? So that's, again, the level at which the compressor will start to act. Right, so it can, and you see the gain reduction as this green tint showing up here underneath the green line, right? So the deeper that green smudge goes, the more you're compressing, right? So right here we're compressing a lot. We're compressing so much that we're losing our low end. So we're going to make up for that by bringing up the level, right? Now, I think that this is also bringing up kind of a muddy frequency that I don't necessarily need. I want just a really deep low. So for that, I can grab this little dot here and actually move the crossover. And it shows you the frequency. So I'm at 124 Hertz right now. Now this sounds better to me. So now let's do the same with the other frequencies. Nice. Now over here, I really like it. I used only the threshold to compress the mids a lot. And that scooped out that little scoop that it did. So I'm not going to make up the gain, right? I'm not going to bring up the gain of the mids. I'm going to leave them kind of low. Right now, I do want maybe a little brightness. Right? So we're going to bring down the threshold so that the compressor starts to act a little bit on the highs. We do want it to act and not leave them completely uncompressed. And then we can bring those up a little bit. So see what I mean by when I say that it's kind of like a hybrid between EQ, because you can do EQ things with it, right? You can scoop out the mids, you can boost the lows, you can boost the highs. Now, Kinkas, you may ask, where are the attack release controls, and how do I add gain, overall gain to this? Because it does sound softer now overall, right? Well, that's on the advanced section here. You click advanced and you can choose the band. So you have low, mid, and high over here. And here, for each band, you have ratio control over here. So right now, by default, there are 4. Right, you have the threshold control here again, right? So in case you, instead of using the controls on the main screen, you can use the controls on the advanced screen here and really dial it in. You can even turn it off or on, right? You can have the compressor only act on 1 frequency or 2 frequencies if you want. So that's where those controls are. I'm not going to fiddle with them right now. You can solo too. So if you want to really hear what that compressor is doing to your low end and what frequencies those are, right? What it sounds like to isolate only below 124 Hertz, which is where we have our crossover right now, right? And you can solo each band as well. And when you choose it, you have the option to solo it. You have the attack and release controls as well by milliseconds. So on here, differently than on the Luminal, right? You have more time, longer, slower attack when you turn the knob clockwise, right? And that's individual by band. Isn't that cool? That's a level of control that's unheard of for a pedal, honestly. You barely get that in a studio compressor anyway. or a plugin. Some plugins don't even give you this level of control. So you have, attack and release for each frequency. So here's high. Let's solo high. Right? And now you have a filters and utilities section over here. This is where you can actually blend in the clean level. For example, if you want to do parallel processing again, parallel compression like we've talked about. And you can make up the overall gain by turning up the comp level over here as well. And there's again the crossover controls. So you can use these knobs, and look at that. You get an overlay of that main screen there, showing you exactly where the dot will go when you change your crossover 1, which is between low and mid, and crossover 2 between mid and high. Right? And over here again you can solo a band, so you can click, you can turn it on here and choose the band that you want to solo. Right? So now we're hearing just the mids. Right? Or now we're just hearing the highs. Oh, wait a minute. That's not working. Oh, that's because we have the clean level up. Let's turn the clean level down. And now we can solo each band. So this is just the highs. This is the mids. And this is the lows. And now I can turn off the solo and hear the end result. Now I'm going to bring my clean level back up. No, and the comp level a little bit up. And now I've I feel like the highs are too loud, so I can click on highs here and just bring the level down, or I can go back to the main screen and just use the level knob on the main screen there. So there are multiple ways to control each thing. As you can see, the crossover, you can either grab the dot and move it, or you can go to the advanced and change the actual frequencies there, or you can go to filters and crossovers. You can do it in filters and utilities over here, where you have the crossover frequencies as numbers controlled by knobs rather than by your finger, if you prefer that. So already I really like this sound. And look at that. When I go out into the main view of the Anagram, the 3 bands, you have 3 gain reduction meters on the icon itself. It's showing you exactly how much you are reducing gain, how much you're compressing each of the 3 bands. Now let's hear what that does to compression, right? To distortion, sorry. We're going to swap out the fruity now to a different, I like the ISO brick, the distorted one here, the one with gain, with overdrive, right there. All right, so this is without the Luminal, the Ignissor. I love it. All right, so let's turn off the distortion again. So, all right, this is like my preferred bass sound for most things, which is just, the nuance tone shaping of a couple of preamps here, the Noble model, which is the gentle, and the harmonic booster by Darkglass themselves. Just that character control there, right? We're almost done we're missing just a couple of things that I wanted to address. So we haven't looked at the optical type compressor, and the simplest compressor we have over here is an optical one. So let's have a look at that. We're going to turn the effects loop back on, and we're going to put my switcher here on number 1. Okay, and we're going to turn compressor down, level down. I was actually super surprised with how well this cheap DoD simple compressor acts on bass. Maybe this is all you need. This is way cheaper than the others. It's also way simpler to set. It just has a compressor knob and a level knob. But it does have kind of a plunky attack. It brings up the noise floor quite a bit right there. And then when you attack it from 0, from silence, I think it has kind of a slow attack. Maybe we need less compression here and less level. Make it more subtle. Right? So much less fine control, but it works, sounds good, it's cheap, and it's optical. It's a very elegant solution, the optical solution, and I think this thing does a great job. Right, I don't have a model of an optical compressor in the Anagram, so we won't do that. And now let's go to the VCA, right? So here is the MXR. And this is basically a studio compressor in a box, right? That's why its brother or sister, the black studio compressor, is exactly the same circuit, just with a different box, just to cater to musicians who are not necessarily using it for bass and don't want to feel like they're using something specific for bass. But it's the same thing, right? And again, this one doesn't have threshold, so you set the threshold by raising the input, raising or lowering the input. Let's bring down the output here so that we can raise the input more and get more compression. Let's try 20 there, a ratio, the highest ratio. Now this one seems to have maybe some kind of noise suppression built in, because I'm not hearing the noise floor go up as it should with so much input gain and so much ratio, right? Now we're also going to have maybe a faster attack, faster release, and now listen to that. It's really compressing a ton. Let's bring up the output again. Now this one I love because of how transparent it is. It doesn't seem to affect the tone of your instrument at all. It really just does the job of a compressor. And nothing fancy. There's nothing like extra about it. It's a compressor that does what the compressors do. It gives you the necessary controls. It's a great compressor, honestly. It's about the same price, similar price to the Boss, and I think both are great. You know, I got this one first. I felt like it colored the sound a little bit too much for me, so I got this one, and then I end up using them in different places. Like I will have this one before my Sans amp in the studio for recording. I might have this one in the living room for practicing or something like that. Although now I have more than I need. I think the Cali 76 is going to become my go-to, so it's probably going to be the one that I use in the studio for recording. It's slightly, I feel like it's slightly better for bass because of the high-pass filter, and it just sounds amazing. So that's like above and beyond, right? The bass compressor does its job, sounds great. The Cali 76 like gives it some mojo, gives you some extra there, right? Let's compare them all a little bit now. Here's the DOD. Here, did you hear when I first attacked it? You kind of, that first note jumped out. That's the thing with the D&D. You don't have DOD. You don't have the attack control. Maybe you need to bring that compression down further still and more. And a little more. This is a very loud bass anyway. The magnet on this is unbelievably powerful, so it sounds louder than a lot of my active basses. This, by the way, is the Wonky bass. It's the L1000 by GNL. It was one of Leo Fender's last bass designs, which I really see as an improvement on the P bass. You can quote me on that, and I don't care if you think I'm heretic. Yeah, that sounds better. I think you need to have, for a bass like this, you need to have your compression way down low over here. And it still compresses, but no longer gives you such a loud thump initially. So yeah, using this subtly seems to be the trick. Now, let's go to the MXR. It's much mellower sound, isn't it? Now let's go to the Cali 76. Of course, we're not matching settings, so you might like one better than the other depending on the set. I mean, if this one is set up wrong and this one's right, it's going to sound better than this one, right? So your mileage may vary and will. This one has an advantage, though, that I don't think I mentioned, which is the dry control. So you can do parallel compression on the Cali 76. The only other that does that is the clean. I didn't plug in the clean yet because it's a VCA like this one. It has sidechain, it has stereo processing, it has tremolo, it has a tilt EQ, and I already did a video about the clean, and I think it's going to be too much. I put it here. I was thinking about including it in the comparisons and stuff, but this video is already getting incredibly long, so I'm just going to tell you to go ahead and check out my video on the clean pedal itself to see all of the wonderful things that it can do. It's about as expensive as the Cali 76, so these are the top tier compressors on my collection here, followed by these two, followed by this one, and this thing really does it all. The Anagram does it all. I mean, I have a problem with gear acquisition. If I had better self-control, I might, just sell all this stuff, keep the Anagram. It does it. It does the job, especially with the Ignissor. The Ignissor is probably the most powerful and capable of achieving the best results out of everything that we've seen today. So anyway, that's the Cali 76. And we're not going to look at the clean today. Go look at that video. And then following the Cali 76, you have the Boss Bass Comp. Now the level is a little low on this one comparatively. Really nice too. All right, let's try to match levels here. So the DOD sounds a little darker, followed by the MXR, which sounds really mellow, really beautiful, followed by the Cali 76, which is super punchy and present, and followed by the bass comp, which colors the sound a little bit due to its EQ-like quality. All of them are great. I could probably just have one of these and be happy, but I'm not that guy. In fact, that's why I'm making this video, because I'm the guy that has a whole bunch of them and can compare them and share the info with you. I think that makes it worth it already. I was going to talk about more of the Anagram's own compressors, right? We have the Luminal here, but there's also the bus compressor, which is based off of the SSL. Yeah, why don't we give a quick listen to that? So we're going to turn off the effects loop for now. So this is what this one sounds like. So this one has a threshold control, has ratio. Ratio goes only up to 10. The attacks are in milliseconds increments, right? And release is also millisecond increments, and you have output gain and blend. So you can do parallel processing on this one as well, and it sounds. By the way, initially the compressors in the Anagram were a little on the weak side, in the sense that you didn't really notice too much, and they did an amazing job improving these guys. There was an update when all of a sudden the compressors like did a quantum leap in quality. So that's what we're dealing with over here, the much improved from the initial release compressors, right? So sounds great. At this point, I'm getting to where my brain can't really process so much difference. It's just hearing, oh, compressed, not compressed. So I'm getting a little bogged down here. So, and after the bus comp, you have the compressor limiter over here, the blue one. And this one, I think it's blue and it's called compressor limiter. I think it might be inspired by the Boss, the blue Boss pedal. But I may be wrong. So this one also has ratios. It does have up to 100. See, that's why it's called limited, because it goes to a very high ratio. And I never talked about limiters. What is a limiter? A limiter is just a compressor with a really high ratio. So it almost puts a brick wall at the threshold, right? So like I said, the ratio is how much you will reduce the volume once it passes the threshold, and you can divide by 2, divide by 4, divide by 8, divide by 20, right? But here you're dividing by 100, so you're letting 1/100th of the volume variation pass through. And there's also limiters that go to infinite, meaning that if it goes up 1 decibel, it reduces exactly 1 decibel, and you have a literal brick wall. That's prone to distortion. You might not want it for bass, right? It's normally we use it for mastering, to just kill the tiny little hairs, to trim out the little peaks in the end of a mix, to be able to bump up the whole mix so it sounds loud in streaming and in radio and stuff. A brick wall limiter like that is useful for that, not so much for bass. This is probably as much as you would want, right? And there's also a control here called knee. The soft knee softens the curve of the compressor response. It's a little bit like adjusting attack and release, and it just makes the compressor a little more transparent, right? And we have output gain here as well. So now we're limiting it at 100 to 1. So really, like if I play super soft and super loud, there's almost no volume change at all. The only change you hear is the tonal change, right? Because it does sound different when you hit it hard from when you hit it soft. Mainly you get more high end when you hit it loud, right? So you can set the threshold a little higher here too. So when you want a more extreme compression, maybe this is the one you'll use, the compressor limiter. So okay, now let's go back to the idea of doing a loop, and we're gonna cycle through my 4 compressors over here. So DOD first. So what happens if I turn the compressor way up here on this? It seems like it already compensates for the gain, so it's bringing up that noise floor a lot. Cool, this is a cool pedal. I highly recommend it if you want something simple and cheap. Alright, let's go to MXR now. The word smooth keeps coming to me as a descriptor for the bass compressor. Well, they're all called bass compressors, aren't they? This one isn't, it's just a compressor. The Cali is a bass compressor, the Boss is bass comp. But I mean the MXR. The MXR is smooth. And the Cali Again, word that comes to me for the Cali is punchy and present. And then the bass, the boss. Now I noticed less bottom end on the bass comp, the boss. I wish I had individual control of the bands here. Since it's a multi-band, I would maybe bump up the low a little bit. But again, you can do that with EQ, something else. It's a great compressor. Again, one more time. DOD. MXR. Origin. Boss. Now let's go to Ignissor. It sounds amazing. I really like the Ignissor. I think it's my favorite. I might have said that already. Now the limiter. Now we're gonna swap this ISO break for the Luminal, so we can hear that as well, which I also like. I really like the Luminal and the Anagram. And again, the Luminal also shows you right on the block graphic here the gain reduction. It's acting quite a bit right now. Maybe we need a little less input, a little more output there. Maybe a little more ratio. And that's the FET, which is similar to the Cali 76. And that'll do it for today, folks. Thank you once again for joining me. If you like this kind of content, check out the other videos. I did one on equalizers, one on bass synthesizer, one on the Entropia, which is a multiband distortion for Anagram. And I'm going to keep doing these kinds of videos, these deep dives into subjects that are interesting and important for bass players that haven't been, in my opinion, properly addressed. And I do my best to draw from my experience as a sound engineer and synthesist to give you an easy to understand, I hope, explanation that gives you the power of knowledge to really know how to use these tools to your advantage. So I've been Bass Fox. Feel the vibration. See you soon.